Hi, my name is Matt Perez, and I'm here with Jose Leal. And we don't have a guest today, so we're going to do a recap of the shows that most impress us. And we have a number of them. The first one that we want to mention is Doug Kirkpatrick. He introduced us. He's been a mentor and angel to us, so I really appreciate his participation. And then we have four others. And we have I gotta put my glasses on. We got Paul Allard from Impact, Bindu Kalisa from Thule Health, and we have Lisa Gill from I know her from Leader Morphosis. That's her podcast, but she's also part of a company in the UK, in Sweden, actually. So, and then we'll talk about Flippa, a website we found very interesting. So, Jose, you want to say anything?
Yeah, I think this is going to be an interesting thing to explore, because a lot of the conversations that we've been having with these interviews has been sort of asking their perspective on what's going on. And part of what we've been trying to do with these podcasts is, how do we have conversations with folks that are already doing things and introduce the language of radical? What is our language, and how do we have these conversations? So these interviews for us are about learning, and learning how to engage with folks about what we've been thinking about for the last 3 or 4 years, and the work that we're doing in the radical network and environment. So the thing that I'd like to do is translate these conversations that we've had into our language and start to explore a little bit about what that looks like for folks and for ourselves.
Good. So we'll start with Paul Allard, which, at least to me, was confusing because the presentation is one of finance, a finance person. And I thought, oh my God, this is not going to go anywhere. But it turns out that he's servicing the financial industry. He's trying to help those people make the right decisions. And he's got, and so the service that he offers is one of giving them data to help them decide who's really doing it well and who's doing it wrong for the planet, and make a decision based on that. And that was very refreshing. It was also his style and things like that was also, we liked it.
Yeah, I liked it a lot. Personally, I thought he opened up my mind, because we've been so focused on how people are changing the way organizations organize.
Right.
And he's going from the outside in. He's like, let's build ecosystem types of changes, in this case, impact analysis, that really reflect what he sees as how we can change organizations from the outside in. Yeah. Now we're going to try something here, because we haven't done this before. So this might get a little messy, but we're going to try interjecting some of these clips from our conversations with these folks, and see if we can do this smoothly enough so it's not too messy, and have these clips really sort of bring us to that interview so we can have a discussion about it. Carlos?
Mission and impact ratings is there to provide the financial sector, which has the power to redirect capital towards those organizations that are in transformation and are generating positive impact. But to do so, to take a better decision, they need to have clarity on who's doing what.
I think he meant
providing them with is an impact statement based on the best a consensual open source standard in the world called the Impact Management Project for them to take better decisions.
Okay, it was messy, but it got the energy and the passion through, and you catch that first. That's what your body responds to first, and but it was saying a very important thing, which is we've been focused on the inside of the company and the inside of the person and stuff like that. So we've been focusing on the insides. He's focused on the outside. He's saying that there may be people out there that want to do the right thing, but don't know how. And he's putting the pieces in place. He's got some of the pieces in place, like the Impact Project, to help those people make the right decisions. And by right means right by the planet, not just right because I say so, right by the planet. So.
Yeah, I like the work that he's doing on the impact the impact analysis that is much more rigid than I think we missed the piece where he says greenwashing and all that bullshit
and all that bullshit
and all that bullshit and so for me it's putting meat on the bones of the idea that we should have impact statements from companies, and that those impact statements should be legitimate and not just promotional BS that they use to in the PR space and in the marketing space. I think there's a real marriage between the work that he's doing and the work that we're doing, because the language that they're using, that Paul is using and that space is using, in essence, is the language that we're using internally within organizations, except that they're looking out and we're looking in. Right. And so that aspect, I think, is a really interesting thing. So I think that Paul's work may not recognize it, and we certainly didn't initially, that we're really doing the same thing. But it is that we are in a different space, and that's an important part of this. There is no way that any of us are going to make this change towards radical organizations, or whatever you want to call them, that it isn't done in all of these areas, right? It's not going to happen just from one place. It's got to happen from a lot of places. And Paul shows us, hey, I'm doing it from the outside in. And this is bringing those pieces together is really going to be helpful.
Yeah, I think the two are complement each other in quite a good way, because the reality is, look, we live in the Fiat world. We've grown in the Fiat world. We live in the Fiat world, and we're not going to get away from that. This is the reality. The important thing is to recognize the Fiat world, that we are in this. We're like fish in water, right? And we see the shadows, people walking on Earth, or animals, free air breathing animals on Earth, and but we're in water, and we don't recognize water. It's like, what water? What? Just go up and down, and I live, and I have kids, and they eat me, and I eat other people and other fish. But what water?
Yeah,
you don't see that, and that's the stage that we're in. And what he's doing is, for the people who are in that space, to show them ways to do things that are more like, are more of a marriage, if you will, to the non-Fiat world, to an alternative, which there are going to be many. But if we use Radical as a template, then that'll be good, because that'll give them the option to gravitate towards us. Just the option, and we'll see.
Yeah. Yep. I think one thing that we should do here, because you introduced Fiat, and that's a link. We introduced Fiat in a couple of conversations, but we've never really sort of dug deep into it. So Maybe I can open the door on that, or you've opened the door. Maybe I can walk through the door. So you're talking about fiat. Obviously, we're familiar with the term fiat as it comes to money, that it is fiat currency, which means that somebody says it's worth something because I say so. And it's no longer tied to real tangible thing, right? It's not like, there's $1 and there's $1 of gold sitting at Fort Knox. It's just, there's $1 and it's worth something. And I'm telling you it's worth something. So that's the idea of fiat. In the case of the way we describe business in general, our world in general, is not from this lens of saying, well, there's this, capitalist way of looking at things, and this communist way of looking at things, and this other ist way of looking at something, but to say that all of those things are operating within this fiat world. Yeah. Whether it's capitalism or anything else, it's operating inside of a world where someone is dictating that the system is this way and it must be this way. And we're all operating inside that system.
And it's the only way.
And it's the only way. And so what you described about the water is really, you're describing this mindset that we all have, this worldview that we all have, that says businesses and the economy as a whole is this thing where we've dictated that business is about making money, not about people. We've dictated that it's about competition, not about collaboration. We've dictated that it's about creating hierarchies of structures where each structure, not hierarchies of people, but hierarchies of structure where each structure dictates to the structure below it. So we've got a federal government that dictates to departments that dictate laws to us and to organizations, and organizations that dictate to the people within the organization. That's what you're describing as our fiat system.
Yeah, I was surprised when we were researching the book. That book. Well, this book. This book. Wow, it's really close. And that there was no way to referring to that. There was no name for it. So we just made it up. We said fiat, and we got good feedback from a couple of people, and we said, okay, so fiat it is. But it could be fiat spelled backwards. We have to recognize that we live in this body of water, this body of mindset that we live in, and we cannot escape. So, like you said, the capitalists and the communists, in one case is, the bosses have the last word. No, the workers have the last word. It doesn't matter. Somebody has the last word, and that's the problem. That's not helping us people in any particular way. It's helping a few of us be very rich and very wealthy and all that stuff, but not humanity. It's not helping humanity. We're struggling with pollution and all the climate change and all the rest of it, and we have to go begging these companies to let governments do the right thing, to let governments regulate them to do the right things. But it's all based on, well, I got more capital than you, so screw you. I do the fiat. I declare this to be this way and that way. And that's why it's going so slowly. If people were in charge, our theory is that if people were in charge, they wouldn't drop garbage in their river stream that they drink from, because that's where they drink from, and they know that they don't want to drink crap. And so the whole climate change thing would have been taken care of a long time ago. Not in a unified way, but in enough pockets that things would have taken shape a lot better, and we wouldn't be right at the edges we are now.
And I think I'm hearing people that are listening to us say, well, that sounds like some ideological utopian world that would happen. And we won't get into that today because we will want to talk more deeply about what we mean about how people do that. But the conversation around just understanding this fiat thing, I think is a really important one. And what I think Paul did for us was say, hey, I see the fiat thing, and without using the terminology, it doesn't matter, but I see the water that you're talking about.
Yeah.
And what I'm realizing is, from Paul's perspective, what I'm realizing is that there's a way that we can use the system as it works to put some reality in there that causes people to start to behave differently, to govern their organizations differently, to report differently, and to be different. So I think that's about it for Paul. I think that was a good exercise.
Yeah, and that's consumed most of the time. So let's go to Bindu. Bindu Kalisa, she's the founder. She's also CEO, but she prefers founder, which I found very refreshing, of Tuli Health, right?
Turi Health.
Turley?
Turi, Tury.
Okay, whatever Jose said is right. And she also, we had a great conversation with her, and she was talking radical, even though she didn't know it. So when do we play the clip, Carlos?
And used and abused so much that, patient centricity means, this big behemoth of our healthcare system, it is nowhere patient centric. But how do we make it patient centric? We can't just make it patient centric. It's not like, covering yourself up with a blanket.
You mean we can't just put patient centered on the front of our hospital website and that does it? Is that not the way it works? I thought that was the way it worked.
That's the way it works. But
that's how it is working right now, right?
Or not working.
Yeah.
That was a perfect edit there, Carlos. Thank you.
Yeah, that went a lot better. So go ahead, Jose. You in fact, your voice was the last one.
Yeah.
Right. So
well, the two things that stick out to me was that Bindu said, and I've heard this before, but it really resonated for me. It's we have a sick care system, not a healthcare system.
Yes.
And that sick care system is regulated by three parties. It's regulated by a financially based pharma, financially based hospital, and financially based insurance system. Three major systems, all of which the goal is profit.
Right.
And in the middle between those three parties are both patients, and we forget not just the patient, but also the providers. They're also stuck in that world. And the systems, the fiat systems, those three fiat systems, we were just talking about the big system of fiat. Each of those is its own little fiefdom of fiat. Each of them operating to try. I mean, the people in there are not bad people. They're just following the water, right? Doing the system the way that they know how to do the system.
Right.
And so for me, her explanation of that really brought some light to me for understanding why is it that it's so screwed up. Well, it's screwed up because these three parties are doing a tug of war, an economic tug of war,
Right.
and the people in the middle that are getting squeezed are both the providers and the patients. And to me, that was sort of, wow, okay, you've just described radical as to her view, which is we have to go back to the patient.
Yeah.
We have to go back to the patient.
Well, and the both types of people involved, the patient and the docs. Once upon a time, when I was younger and had hair coming out of the top of my head, docs were very much in charge of hospitals. They were very much in charge of hospitals. They were, different radiologists and cardiologists and this and that, but still they saw patients and they were in charge of hospitals, and they wanted to make money. Don't get this wrong. But that's changed, and the people that come out of school now go to work for a practice or go to work for a hospital for a while, and then they start their own practice, and all they learn is, well, money's the most important thing. I have to make money. And I'm blessed with a doctor that doesn't care about that anymore, but the doctor happens to be 70 years old. So, he's gone through a whole arc, and now is waiting years. He's saying, you know what, this money chasing thing doesn't make sense. And so, but that's lucky me,
Right.
If I go to any other doctor, any other specialist, the first thing is, what's your insurance? What's your backup insurance? What's your triple backup insurance? And if you don't have any, it's like, oh, sorry, we don't take people without insurance, or we don't take people with Medicare, or we don't take people with that kind of insurance, because it's all about the profit. It's the only thing you know how to measure.
Well, it's a system where we have the Fiat system is really saying people's lives are represented by money.
Yeah.
That's it. So how much does it cost to do that thing? Well, the insurance company thinks it costs too much. So can we get approvals for things? Right? I go to the doctor says, I think you need to get a test on your heart. But the insurance company is going to say no. So I'm going to have to find a way to make it so that they'll approve that test.
Right.
Right. So right away, my doctor's thinking about money rather than my health. How do I get it approved? How do I get the insurance company to accept this? Right.
Well, he's not thinking about money, but he's thinking about all the bureaucracy that's
exactly
sprung up to protect the money-making machinery. And there's nothing wrong with money. Okay, don't get out of this that, oh, these guys are communists, and there's nothing wrong with money, but there's something wrong with the only measure of success is money. So in insurance, they count lives because, as you said, each life has a price, and they can say, oh, 100,000 lives at $3.50, at $350 million, whatever the story is. And that's the only metric they have, not wellness, not
quality of life,
better.
not impact. Yeah.
I was reading about preventive medicine from the point of view of an individual, knowing what the individual needs. We're at the point now where we can measure wellness of each individual. Okay, that's going to take forever to get into the system.
Yeah.
If we can get in at all, and what we can get in is whatever makes money. The parts that don't make money, well, the church is going to take care of that, or
the community organization,
organizations, nonprofits, blah blah blah. Or at one level, at the other level is the people who can pay for that on their own. Okay.
And just to get back to Bindu, because the other thing that she's doing with Turi, I'm not sure how she pronounced it, but is she's saying we want to work with patients in order to be able to do clinical studies.
Yes.
From the patient perspective, what the patients need, how they can engage, and she's identified that what we have is a system where, again, back to money. It costs, I think she said, $6,500 to get a person to participate in a clinical study, and that the average clinical study costs something like $30 million.
$30 million. When she
$30
said that, I
million.
almost fell off the chair.
Exactly. So how do you build a system of human-based clinical studies rather than pharma-based clinical studies that are there to say, oh, we want to do a clinical study, now let's go find people, rather than saying, hey, here's a whole bunch of people that are dealing with health issues of one kind or another. Is there a clinical study that could serve them? Is there a clinical study that could get involved in and do it across genders, do it across races? That's the role that she wants to play. And I think that's a beautiful example of what radical is.
And it's cheaper.
And it's cheaper. She said like 90% cheaper.
She said, yeah, for a tenth of the price. And so what happens is it's inertia. We've been doing it this way. We inherit these studies from docs. That's the way they did the study. And of course, they did a study at a university. So we're going to do studies at universities. And like it or not, most universities tend to be majority white and majority all that stuff. And so there's a lot of drugs. Another thing that you mentioned is that there's a lot of drugs on the street. The majority of drugs on the street, we know what the side effects are for European type phenotypes. We don't know what they are for India, which is a big part, for China, because
for Africa.
Not a conspiracy or anything, but we just don't include those people because they happen not to be at universities, unless you look at Berkeley and stuff like that. But
well, I think it's a little less that they're not at universities. It's more that the system caters more to mainstream health, and those people aren't part of the mainstream health. She pointed out that the Black population in the United States, they're distrusting of ideas of let's do some testing, we'll test on you, right? And so there's a gap between those communities and the mainstream health system and the ones that are more approached by overall. I think that my lesson there is, wow, there are people that understand that we need to work from a radical way, from a human-based radical way, and aren't thinking about what we've been working on, the Fiat and the radical and purpose and force and all those other things that we've been playing with, but they get it, intuitively get it. Right. And she certainly got it. Bindu absolutely got it.
She certainly got it, but it's very difficult to hold on to that mindset and that view and all that unless you're clear on what the distinctions are. So that's what we're bringing in that book. That's what we're bringing forward, the idea that there is a system that we live in that has had good results in a lot of ways. But we need alternative systems because that system has had good results. It has the best results for 100 people or 67 people, whatever the number is, at the very top. The majority, that means in all of humanity, for anything but a statistical error, all humanity is not getting the benefits at large. Right. So um, there's people at the very top, the people below that still very well and stuff like that. But the majority of people are not participating in the wealth that we create. So we need to have a system that lets people participate in the wealth that we create without taking anything from anybody. So Jeff Bezos, God bless his soul, gets to keep all his money, and Musk, okay, he gets to keep all his money too, and stuff like that. But the rest of the wealth that we create at some point has to be more equally distributed amongst everybody else. And I don't mean equally,
Yeah.
because that brings specters of communism and stuff like that.
Yeah.
It's more based on their contributions. People contribute more, they get more, they contribute less.
I like one of the things that we came up with when we were initially doing our research for the book and having discussions for the book. And that was, there is nothing wrong with capitalism conceptually.
Yeah.
There's only one thing wrong with capitalism. It's not distributed enough.
Right.
So everybody should be a capitalist. It shouldn't be that the 1% are capitalists and the rest are participating in that capitalist system, but are not benefiting from the capitalism as
Right.
it's
Right. And the base of capitalism is ownership. So the whole concept of ownership, which a lot of people say, oh, that's bad. No, it's a human invention. It's like having bathrooms inside the house. It's a human invention. The thing is that's been very restrictive to the owners based on capital. And what we're proposing is that it be decentralized based on contributions. So if you contribute more, you should get more. If you contribute, if you sit around and do nothing, then okay, that's you're telling me what you want to do here.
So we've got.
Conversation is important.
I think we're going to dig deeper into that in future conversations, but we've got one more. You mentioned at the beginning that
Lisa Gill.
Yeah, we've got Lisa Gill coming. I was going to say that
we have time.
We have time, but you mentioned Doug Kirkpatrick at the beginning, and another person that I think has been fundamental in helping us sort of understand this space as we've been moving has been Lisa, through a lot of the work that she's done and the network that she has. And our conversation with Lisa, I thought was really cool. And so Lisa's been sort of working on some things. Did you want to?
No, go ahead.
Describe that? Okay. So one of the things I love about Lisa is that she's been in this game probably as long as anybody else. And yet she's a young person. She's not as old as we are. Certainly not as old as you are. But
she doesn't have a beard.
Yeah, she doesn't have a beard. But she is probably the most pragmatic person that I know in this space. She really isn't about ideology, and she just keeps refining her way of describing things and her way of doing things. And her latest book with her colleagues, Moosehead on the Table, I thought was a really good example of, hey, we've got a conversation to have. And part of the conversation we need to have is to bring all of the reality to it. This isn't about, some ideology. You can say this, but you can't say that. You can do this, but you can't do that. No, screw all that. We've got to bring it all. And this, I guess it's a Scandinavian saying of the moose head on the table, sort of the elephant in the room. We might
use the elephant in the room for us. Yeah,
that we might use here in North America. She's bringing that to the table, and she brings something else. So why don't we ask Carlos to go ahead and play that, and then we can talk about that.
I don't hear anything.
Yeah, I'm not hearing it. Carlos, can we try that again? Still not hearing it, Carlos. So why don't we give up on that?
Yeah, let's give up on that.
It's obviously not working for some reason. We're not getting the audio. But basically, I think the clip there is Lisa talking about hierarchy and what is hierarchy, and you know, there's a dogma within the sort of Teal universe and the future of work universe and all of this stuff that's like no hierarchy, absolutely no hierarchy. And Lisa points out there's hierarchy everywhere. Everything has hierarchy. Our families have hierarchy. Our culture has hierarchy. Our environment has hierarchy. It isn't.
I mean, right now I'm at the top of the hierarchy that I'm talking, right? And in a minute you're going to start talking again. Then you're at the top of the hierarchy. So hierarchy is when there's more than one people in the room. It's what happens.
It exists. It exists.
Yeah.
It exists, and it exists for different reasons, right? I happen to be good at something, and you give me way for that, and you happen to be good at something else, and I give you way for that, and we do all of those things, and that's just sort of a normal aspect of relationships. What's wrong with hierarchy is, in our words, and I think Lisa pointed it out in a slightly different way. What's wrong with hierarchy is when it's imposed.
Right.
It's this person has the final word, no matter what, because they have the final word. That's who it is.
The boss.
So he's the boss. He's the CEO. He's the owner. He's the investor. Whatever the case may be. And so Lisa says, no, it's not black and white, right? There's hierarchy, and some hierarchy is good, some hierarchy is natural, and then there's this thing where it's imposed. And so we'd call that a Fiat hierarchy, a hierarchy that's imposed both externally to organizations and then internally within organizations.
And interestingly enough, there is no term for it. Like even Lisa was talking about, she calls it the hierarchy dynamics, as opposed to the hierarchy, because it's always hierarchy, but hierarchy dynamics. And I think it's simpler to just tag a name on it, and we tagged it with Fiat, because it's an important distinction, super important distinction.
And just to play off that a little bit, and we got to run here, but what Lisa's really doing, and the work that her colleagues are doing, is how do we learn to not play that game anymore? How do we learn to communicate with each other from a place of just spilling all the beans, just let it all out. Let's be transparent with each other, which is another thing that we keep talking about. Transparency is the only way that we're going to actually be able to operate in this new world. Is if we give up Fiat, we need something new to make up. There's no way we can just keep hiding all our shit and expect that it's going to work.
You said shit.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to say shit. Will you stop saying it? So basically the idea is, hey, let's have conversations where we bring all of our true selves, full selves to the equation. And when we do that, if these natural hierarchies emerge, because when I share with you that I love to do this thing, I'm really passionate about it, and I've done it all my life and I want it. Okay, that's what it is. And you do the same thing about something else. Okay, that's what it is. Let's not presuppose that because whatever, you have that role to fill because it's been assigned to you, and that we then have to kowtow to you for that reason.
Right.
I thought that was a great conversation with Lisa, and
Yeah.
I'd love to
She's
learn
been
more.
consistent over the years. I mean, I did a podcast a long time ago, and somebody from a company that I was in did, and she's been very consistent, very consistent. She's talked to brand people, name people, and stuff like that, and she keeps, just pushing for the same thing, very gently, very, very British kind of way, but she's very consistent.
Yeah, she's a sweet woman, and I loved the fact that we got an opportunity to talk to her, and that we can learn from how she's framing some of this, because I think her framing is an important piece of it. That's our. I think those are the folks we wanted to talk about today. Anything
I
else?
want to mention one more. We talked to the CEO of Flippa, Flippa. His name is Blake Hutchison.
Yeah.
And to be honest, when we talked to him, I was kind of like, okay, I get it. No, I don't get it. And then we went and did some research. It is dynamite. So go to flippa.com and look it up. It's a trade thing for online properties that people want to sell. So I do a podcast. I build it up to so many views a year and stuff like that. It's important in a certain way. So if you want to start it, but I've got tired of it. Okay, if you want to start it from that point on, you can buy my property and continue adding to it. And I thought that was really exciting because it takes some of the risk away from what people want to do. I mean, people do know that entrepreneur. I mean, we lived in the middle of Silicon Valley, so it's easier to say, but there's a sense that entrepreneurship is what creates wealth, right? But it's a lot of risk. You got to raise a lot of money and unicorns and all kinds of things. And this way is more of an organic kind of way. And Flippa raises the bar, raises the ground floor.
The starting point. Yeah, I wasn't party to that conversation, so I didn't benefit from speaking to Blake directly. But what I've gathered from it since, in the quick time that I was looking at the site as you guys were doing the research, I found that there's this understanding that I can think of it as a distributed or a decentralized way of starting a new business, because I can pick up 2 or 3 properties and start to do something different, something unique, and not have to start at ground zero, right?
Right.
So that seemed like an interesting thing, and in part, I think that's going to be how many people are engaged in multiple properties, doing multiple types of businesses, doing different kinds of things. So we're not going to be, pigeonholed into one career or pigeonholed into only doing one thing. So I could be part of something that is part of what is I'm passionate about, right? And do that as part of a side hustle, as they call it today. But I think really what's going to be, everybody's just going to have a whole bunch of side hustles and no main hustle necessarily. So I think that's a really cool thing to explore and understand. And I think that's really what Blake's kind of playing with, is that space.
Yeah. The only thing to keep in mind is that you have to buy the property with capital. It doesn't come out of nowhere. So there's that issue of having some capital, but again, flip out lowers the amount of capital that you put in. What we need is to flip out this based on contributions. That would be super. So and there may be something there or not, but in any case, go check it out. It's a good site.
Yeah. So I think that's it for today. I think we're
Yeah, I
done. We
think so.
just want to introduce next week's guest.
I don't know what next week's.
I think Carlos is telling us that it's Kendall Johnson, co-founder and
Kendall
CEO
Johnson.
of.
Okay, next week.
Yeah.
Go ahead. You make it intro.
Yeah. So next week we've got we're gonna have a conversation with Kendall Johnson, co-founder and CEO of Subscribe. That's SUBSKRYB.com. And Carlos does all of this booking for us. So it's always a pleasure to learn who these folks are and how they relate to the future and of the radical world. So
looking forward to how Subscribe in the non-fiat world works. But we'll see. We're going to find out.
Yeah. Oh, there's Kendall.
There's Kendall.
Thank you for that, Carlos. Thank you for doing all the masterful work of trying to show those videos. That's an experiment for us today, and it kind of worked. So thank you for that.
Yeah.
And that's it for today.
Bye.